Okay.
Hi.
Hello.
We're back. I'm Ruth Sheehan.
I'm Danielle Tully.
And we're putting the real in real estate. So today we're talking about a question we're hearing fairly often. And it's coming from different directions with different context. But basically it boils down to this market is really hot. Is it going to crash? And I think when most people say crash, they're really thinking 2008 crash.
Correct.
The biggest housing crash.
I think that if they pay $300,000 for a house today, that in a year or 6 months or whatever, that it's now going to be worth 160 or selling for 160. So I think, and this is more about, I'm going to share the graphic right away, if you don't mind, Ruth.
Yeah, first of all, let's start with the disclaimer that we know nothing about the future.
Correct. Nobody does, but that's our point. Nobody does.
People who are calling things don't know any more than anyone else. There's data, there's reasons for people to have the theories that they have. But if coronavirus taught us anything, it's that we have no idea what's coming. So speculation is just speculation. As I said to Danielle a little earlier, if we knew anything about the future, I would have a crap ton of cryptocurrency today.
Yes. Tesla and
I do have a little Tesla.
Do you? Well, I'd have a lot more.
I would too.
Exactly. So, but yeah, I think that some of this is to be the first, right? Be the first to call it. See, I know what I'm doing, and that, as Ruth and I have had many conversations about what was happening in 2008 before the crash, is that one of those leading voices that you hear still to this day on, I think he's on CNBC, but he's all over the place. He
literally all over the place.
Yes. I remember him very much deciding that the small dip in the recession was going to last about 3 months. It was going to be all over in August, he said, of 2008. And that was just the beginning.
And I remember another commentator on CNN a little ways into it when, people were kind of figuring out a little bit about what was going on. And that was when everybody started trying to figure out who was to blame. So there were many people blaming borrowers, people were blaming banks, people were blaming the markets behind the banks. And of course, all of those things were factors, but everybody had their own dog in the fight that they wanted to back. And I remember this CNN commentator looking at someone who was going on and on and on about who was to blame. And he said, hey, wait a minute. We were all drunk at that party.
Yes.
It was the most apt description. Everybody was enjoying the high times and then wanted to blame somebody else for when it fell apart.
Absolutely. But I do, we'll talk about a few different indicators that aren't following that rhetoric. But I did just want to share this because I quote this pretty often, and there's an infographic that CoreLogic put together that I wanted to share that kind of gives, puts the evidence there. So let's see where I'll be able to. Oh, this is here. Hold on.
By the way, if you're joining us, pop a comment into the comments.
Yes.
Say hello and let us know who you are and where you're from.
Okay, here it is. I wanted it to be home. There we go. All right. So here, do you see it, Ruth? I
have to add it to the stream. There we go.
Okay, excellent. So the last 5 recessions. So 2008, which is clear in many, many people's minds, is, what everybody's very much worried about. It's, we saw an average home price, diminishing of 20%. And obviously there was a lot of places where that was even higher. But as you go back since 1980, so the last 40, 41 years, we've had a few dips in the market, a few recessions. And even
sorry, does anyone else forget that 1980 was not 20 years ago? It was 40 years ago. Just had to throw that in there because I went, wow, 1980, 41 years. Yes.
Yes, I wish. And somebody asked me yesterday if I was, you're over 16, right? And I'm like, yes, but I don't know how that happened.
Yep.
Don't know how. So anyway, so as you can see, in 1980 and 81, we had a positive, as well as 2001, we had a positive increase in the home prices, even despite everything else going around it. So, and even in 1991, though there was a bit of a dip, I mean, it's, in my mind, a lot more, you know, to say 2% is a lot more doable and almost, you know, negligible, if you ask me. You know, if you have a $200,000 house and now it's worth $196,000, you know, that I think is almost in line with normal kind of ups and downs that you would see year over year sometimes.
And this again, of course, is nationwide. So there are places that saw a bigger or smaller impact.
Correct.
Tanya's joining us from Texas. Speaking of a place where the market's on fire.
Oh yes, hello, Tanya. Yeah, so what we just want to say that even if things do go south in other aspects, it doesn't necessarily mean that the housing market, you're going to be losing your money. And again, you know, we've said it probably every single one of these videos so far has been interest rates remain low. So if you're worried about losing 2-3% of your value, think about how much you would lose by paying an extra 1 or 2% interest rate.
And it's a lot. I read today, and of course, I don't do this math, but you might be able to. Someone said that if interest rates go up 1%, that will be about an additional 8% in prices.
Yes, I saw that. I didn't exactly know where he got it from, and I didn't have the time to do the actual math.
Okay,
and
so we'll just throw that out as something someone else said.
I mean, I'm sure if you picked a price range and then you set an extra 1% and then you extrapolated the whole thing, you'd get 8%. But there's probably many that is up or down from that percentage. But yeah, so interest rates staying low, you know, just think of the savings, you know, 15, 20 year, 30 year mortgage, the savings that if the price of your house does stabilize or even dips a little bit, you know, up to 2%, that you're certainly saving a lot more over, even if we went back to the average, which we've been above that average for a while, I think. But if you went to the average of 7 years of somebody keeping their house or keeping a mortgage, I think you would see it's very, you know, even, and certainly still better than renting, right?
Right, exactly. Where every single dollar is just going into a big black hole. So the other thing is, you know, interest rate, yes, over time, the savings is definitely there, but a lot of people don't like to look that far down the road. They get, you know, quite frankly, distracted and bored with 360 payments. But what it also equates to is buying power. So that interest rate increase could decrease your buying power by tens of thousands of dollars. So if you can qualify for a $300,000 house today, interest rates increase by not very much, your buying power, that pre-approval, could go down to $275,000 or even less, depending on the difference. So and this is part of, you know, how and why we see these price increases, because the affordability remains the same.
Correct. And that's part of the reason for the demand, is people know that they want to get in while they have their buying power, you know, maximized. And then inflation's another buzzword that, you know, you hear a lot, especially in situations like this where the government is doing a lot to try to keep things stabilized, with, various programs out there for helping, home buyers, helping people, who are struggling financially from unemployment or other, just stimulus packages, right?
And homeowners, people who already own a home, who might otherwise be in difficult situations. A lot of the stimulus is shoring them up.
And tax changes, tax liability changes for those who have kids and different. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts going on over the last year regarding that. But as of right now, the Fed is not worried about inflation. I don't know how often they are, but it is. They have come out and said that I think that's negligible. It's not going to, in the long term, really cause anything to crash in the end. And jobless counts. Jobless rate is down to last year's March of last year's levels. So I know a lot of people were worried about people being unemployed and their late payments coming to bite them in the end. Forbearance periods coming to an end, and making the big check to be written won't be written because these people might not have jobs. And so I'm not saying some of these people who are still or who are no longer even on the jobless register aren't struggling, but again, a healthier economy or something that's a little bit more stable. Again, crash. We're talking about crash.
Yeah, we do think there's a good chance of a correction at some point. We don't know when it's coming, but markets go up and down, and that's probably going to happen. Right now, though, there's a lot of talk about there being, actual demand. There is a shortage of houses for the number of people who want them. Investors are still buying, so so there are more buyers than sellers in the market, and so that creates a true supply and demand issue. Builders cannot build fast enough, and they can't build what is in high demand because materials are really expensive. The cost of building materials.
But despite that, and I think that goes hand in hand also with the other prices that we're seeing, the resale value. But despite the fact that lumber and material costs are rising, the home builder confidence is up too.
Oh, absolutely, because of the high demand. But they're not able to build lower price point homes.
No.
So
I see what you're saying.
The only thing that's available in certain price points are resale homes.
Correct. Yes. Okay. And even so, I mean, coming up with it's not something that can be done quickly. New home buyer, if a builder decides they're going to, it's about taking over, purchasing, that can take a long time as a huge swath of land, and then deciding what they're putting on there, and then doing the infrastructure, because we will not be making that mistake again where infrastructure does not get put in cost, put part of the cost of the
right. Oh, we'll just put that on the back end. That worked well.
Yes. No, not at all.
We have to do a video on that sometime on SSAs.
Yes.
So people know what to look for there.
Yes. Hopefully they're going to be, 15 years later at 20. If they're 20 years, they're almost gone. But there's plenty there 30 years as well. So that's not great. But yeah.
So no one is seeing home building as being the thing that relieves this pressure. It's too far out. It's too little. And so we still have a serious demand. And that's one of the big reasons why we're not buying into this sit on the sidelines and wait for it to crash idea. Another thing is that, oh, darn it. I do this all the time on these. I started to make a point and completely forgot what it was. I was going to go back to, so nobody wants foreclosures.
Nope.
In 2008, up until that point, banks were not very big on foreclosing on properties. It was cumbersome for them to handle properties. It wasn't what they do. They didn't really know how to sell them. They had to plug into the real estate side, and they're not good at that.
Yeah.
And then, but when 2008 came and prices were really high, what I observed, and I never ever heard anyone else say this, but so this is just totally made up by me. Banks looked and said, wait a minute, we have assets worth a lot of money. Let's take them. And they were very quick to foreclose in those early days. And everyone kept saying, banks don't want this on their books. And I was like, well, they're certainly working pretty hard to get as many as they can on their books.
Yes. There was one bank in particular that I know had far too much and didn't do very much to try to, well, actually a couple banks that didn't do very much to get it off.
They took it all, and then they still had no idea what to do with it and how to expeditiously move that inventory into the hands of people who could improve it,
correct,
et cetera. And so they really put themselves in a pickle by being extra greedy. The law was on the bank's side very much at that point because it hadn't really ever happened much. You know, foreclosures were the last option. And when they happened, the law supported the banks. Well, the banks really, I think, screwed that up. They never figured out how to properly handle and move foreclosures through the process. Even years in, we all thought by now they should have figured something out, like to, have staff or something. But it's always been an extremely painful process, especially with short sales particularly. So they didn't ever figure that out. And I don't think they want to get into that again. I don't think that worked out well for them. The politics of it is another thing that nobody wants to be the administration or in the governing body when people start losing their homes again. So the political stomach for foreclosures is not what it was.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
So they're going to do whatever they can between the government and banks.
And we've already talked about this forbearance a few times as well, that forbearance that banks are allowing people to basically back end, not balloon, which is a problem that was in 2008, but back end where, you know, you basically take 5, 6, whatever the bank is allowing months of non-payment and add those payments to 6 extra. So if you were to be paying, you know, if your house was going to be paid off, I'm going to throw a number, March of 2050. Oh no, that was 30 years from now. So 2040, right? They would take those and your loan would be paid off in September or October of that same year.
Which is really such a simple and elegant solution to the problem. I mean, a year ago, the government said to a lot of people, or employers or whoever said to a lot of people, you can't go to work. You can't go to work and you're not going to get paid while you're not working, depending on where you are. They did, you know, increase unemployment ability, but there are lots of people who've been suffering financially. Can't pay your mortgage rather than lose your house. This is a temporary problem. Let's come up with a temporary solution. So we just take those payments, we put them on the back end. The bank's going to get paid. They can wait.
Yeah.
You get to stay where you are. However, that leaves us still with this huge lack of inventory where there's a little bit of normal foreclosure inventory that comes on the market that isn't there to ease just a little bit of that pressure. So it compounds what we're experiencing.
Sure. But then, you know, it also benefits them too, because then their asset, you know, if they were to foreclose, the value stays high. You know, if anything else were to happen, they are pretty much guaranteed their money, opposed to, you know, the horrible disaster of, you know, people damaging the houses and ruining the houses, and then the banks need much more money.
Most people have equity, so if they find that they're not able when that period is over, they can sell at a good price because it's not destroyed And because they haven't, been hanging on by their fingernails forever, they can sell right now for a good price, pay off that extra from the forbearance along with their original loan, and still walk away with enough money to, get back on their feet.
Yes. Yeah.
So the equity position that most people are in is far greater.
Yes. So even if people are finding that their banks for some reason are not offering a forbearance, or they don't like it, or whatever, the idea of, a short sale might not be a short sale. You might be a couple payments behind, but there's 100%, there's a very, very good chance that whatever, unless you just bought it, or you've owned it for a long time and just have done, let it kind of go by the wayside, that there's probably some wiggle room there to where it could be a very quick, easy close, and not have to go through anything that's going to long-term affect your credit score, which a short sale and a foreclosure certainly do.
And anyone who's experiencing any of this, as long as they talk to their bank first, they're most likely going to be fine. So it's always the people who stop opening their mail that find themselves in trouble.
Correct. Yes, and foreseeing, even if a bank only gives you 6 months of forbearance, and you see the long-term chances of being able, because maybe people are now underemployed or something like that, that what they could afford before is not what they can afford now. Again, now is the time to go, okay, let's put this, I won't be able to afford it, so let's do it while it's higher, or maintained, before everything starts to get behind, tumble around, and what's the word I'm looking for? Like where I'm thinking of a cartoon.
Snowball.
Thank you. I was literally thinking of a gigantic snowball.
That's why we share a brain.
Absolutely. So, that's it. There's no reason to do that. And that's another reason for the crash, right? There was foreclosures and short sales and damaged properties and all that stuff that really made the overall neighborhood go down. When there's been foreclosures around you and you're trying to sell your house for full price, and to an extent, investors and buyers don't care that you have a washer and dryer and a refrigerator and a stove and this one doesn't. They'll save the $30,000 and buy $10,000 worth of appliances. But the last point I wanted to make, just to say that's probably, of the things that we've talked about, one of the least important, because it really doesn't have to do with the housing market, but again, it talks about the stability that we're looking at is just retail's up too. Retail's up by 10% in the last month. So, again, consumer confidence seems to be out there. There's people buying a ton of homes. There's people buying a ton of other products. Unemployment's down, just go back, the unemployment's down, the interest rates are staying flat. The Fed doesn't seem to be worried about raising interest rates. Jobless counts are down. Home builders are out there building and have, they're planning to keep doing that. So all of those things, while it might correct, right, while it might not be a crazy 17 offers on a home market out there, we will be back. We should for a while, foreseeable future, be able to sustain.
And I also want to put in, because again, we don't know what's going to happen. This is Danielle and I looking at all of the data and what we're hearing and what we're experiencing, and saying this is really what it looks like to us. What's getting me in some cases is seeing people who actually seem to be looking forward to this crash that they anticipate, as if it's going to benefit them. Well, there were a few people who did well out of the last crash, but overall not too many. And it to be looking for that much pain to save a few dollars on a purchase is just morally wrong. But it's also probably not going to serve you well, because the first thing that happened when the indicators started, showing up that things were sliding was the banks grabbed everything they could and hunkered down. Lending got so difficult and so expensive. So interest rates were high. You had to bring 20% to almost any closing table. The loans that are in place for people who don't have a lot of cash were really, really difficult to come by. Even investment was really restricted because most foreclosures had periods of time that investors were barred from buying.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not easy, and it was much more expensive for everything else. So yes, you can save some money on the purchase price of the house, but your interest rate is higher, your fees are higher, the down payment is huge. All of that, plus that's if you could even qualify, because all of the qualifications were through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not something anyone should hope to go back to just so that they can get a decent savings on a house, in their opinion.
Yeah. Again, you could probably save $40,000 buying right now with the interest rates as they are, opposed to interest rates going up and the home prices going down.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other thing is taxes. Taxes don't change. I mean, your personal taxes change. They go in, as I say, one direction. But the way property taxes work, it's really genius. All of the taxing bodies put their budgets together. They bring it in, they submit it to the assessor, and they say, this is how much money we need. And the assessor says, okay, I'm going to assess that across the board. Well, if a quarter of the homeowners are not paying their taxes because they're all in foreclosure, then that 75% gets redistributed. I mean, the whole gets redistributed among that 75%. Mm-hmm. They don't take less taxes. Right. It doesn't happen. Nope. So don't wish for a crash. It's really stupid.
Nope. And if you want more personalized information about either your home value, what's going on with your neighborhood, or a neighborhood you're interested in purchasing, please feel free to reach out to us. We are happy to share what we know about your personalized situation.
And that's really, we always come back to, where do you need to live? If it's not where you are right now, then stop paying attention to, the little bit of market ups and downs, and what might be coming in the future. And let's talk about getting you into a more appropriate house for your stage of life and what you want to do and where you want to do it.
Absolutely.
It's about a home.
What?
It's about a home.
Yes. Investments is a bonus. The idea that, you might be able to, when you go to sell, make some money is one thing. But for the most part, it is about what's going to be comfortable for your day-to-day living situation. And
if you are an investor, we can look at those specifics as well. That's a different approach. You have different criteria and different needs. But for most people looking for a home, stop thinking of it as a financial instrument.
Yes. It's like day trading.
Exactly.
It's the long game.
Yep.
All right.
So good to see you. And we will be back next week. Are we doing horror stories next week or the week after?
We could do horror stories next week. We could do new home builds. We'll figure it out.
Let us know. Make a comment. You want to hear horror stories or do you want to hear about new home builders?
Well, I know what they want to hear about. The horror story. Make them feel better. And they're not going to be mostly our horror stories. It makes me feel better too. So
exactly, they make us feel a lot better. We've got horror stories from around the country. The worst thing that happens at the closing table, from the mouths of realtors.
We got to vote for.
Tanja wants to hear about new home builders.
Okay. Well, then perfect. Well, then maybe we'll do that. All right. Well, we'll see. Keep out there checking out what our topic is, and just know that we'll cover both soon anyway. So
yes, we will do both. So just a matter of
all
which
right.
All right. Thank you. Bye, Tanja. Bye, other people who haven't commented, and I don't know who you are.
Thanks for keeping up with us.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.